This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. I am very honored to be with Neil Lansing, owner of Piedmont Machine in Concord, North Carolina. Welcome to the show, Neil.
Hello. Good to be here.
Yeah, I met Neil last week. We were talking index machines, and fascinating guy. He's got a great story. The first thing I want to talk about, I just want to get a brief overview of your company, just so people have a little context.
Sure. What we do is we're a contract manufacturer, and we do CNC machining, and we specialize in Swiss machining at one facility, which is smaller diameter work with large volumes. And then at our other facility, we do large diameter work up to 30 inches OD. And it's more of a heavy type of part that you would find in anything from Caterpillar bulldozers to landing gears on planes and things of that nature.
Interesting. Okay, awesome. Now I want just the 5-minute bio. How did you get to be the owner of Piedmont? I know you've got an interesting story. How old are you? You're 67?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I basically went to school for engineering, mechanical engineering, worked at Hughes Aircraft in my first job, then went on to Northrop and did more satellite work. I did satellite work for both places. And then I went and got an MBA and got out of engineering and went into finance. And through the finance side of things, really became part of different situations, running businesses or making them work better or buying businesses.
You were more interested in finance than engineering. I know that's often a trajectory people take, but
yeah, there's a lot of people that do what I did. A lot of people will end up going into some sort of investment banking. I kind of wanted to stay on how you run a company and how you make it better. So I went to companies that were either providing a service or making something in the end. And as I went through that, I was fortunate enough to get involved with certain circumstances that would put me in a position either where I was turning or making something better, turning it around or making it better.
So you were working in private equity?
Not yet. I was still with a big company at that time.
What was the big company? What
exactly? It was Dun and Bradstreet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so everybody thinks Dun and Bradstreet as being the credit report for small businesses. But they had, at that time, they had roughly 30 to 40 properties, and they were diverse in their portfolio where they had companies that did everything from information for pharmaceutical industry, marketing research for AC Nielsen, software with McCormick Dodge back at the time for GLs type things. And so, for us, we were always involved we were in a special program that we got involved with coming into the company. And then we got to see a lot of what was going on across a lot of different companies, helping to make those businesses work better. And then after that, I basically, I was part of the team. We split that company up at the time back in the early or the late 90s. And so it went from being Dun and Bradstreet to 3 other different companies. And so
Dun and Bradstreet became what we know now as the loan.
Well, there was already that, but it became, they basically divided it into a growth play, which was called Cognizant. And under Cognizant, they had data companies plus software that the expectations were for the institutional investors that it was still going to keep growing at 10, 15% each year. And Cognizant now is also, if you go look it up now, it's a huge software concern where they do a lot of different types of apps, general software to run a business, and all these other things. It's interesting too because their main development centers are now in India versus being in the U.S. And but the other two were the Dun and Bradstreet portion was basically a solid play, consistent earnings and whatnot, and then AC Nielsen was a turnaround play.
Okay, and that's what you were.
Yeah, I went with AC Nielsen in the beginning as we did the transaction. And shortly thereafter, then I became a CFO of a publicly traded company that was doing contract research for major pharmaceutical companies.
So how do you go from working at this offshoot of Dun and Bradstreet to just now I was the CEO of a company?
A CFO, yeah. So what I did was I was very fortunate because a lot of people that I had worked with at Dun & Bradstreet, it was during the time of a lot of things were going on with the internet and whatnot. And so there was a lot of people who end up, one of the guys I worked for.
Is this the early 2000s, late 90s?
It's mid to late 90s.
Okay.
So it's by the time we're doing this, it's 93 to 96. And
it's like AOL era.
Yeah. And it's the era where E-Trade became public. So the guy I worked for when we were in AC Nielsen back in the early 90s, he was running it. He was an old guy from FedEx, and then he went and was doing something with Dun & Bradstreet, and then he became he knew the founder for E-Trade, and the guy asked him if he wanted to come over. At the time they were going to do an IPO. And he did, so he went over and he became really famous, that guy, Christos Kasakis. And he did very well too. And then other guys that I worked with, another person, he became a TV star on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But his real claim to fame was he went and ran Palm back in the day when you had the handhelds. And he Palm One, I think it was called. And he basically sold that, and then he became, the CEO of the largest Hewlett Packard division. And he was there for quite a while. And then I'm making the joke about the housewives, because he ended up marrying someone who was on that show.
All right. I was wondering, okay, he sells Palm Pilot, and then he becomes a CEO, and now... And then how he became a TV star. It was interesting.
So I was fortunate. Yeah. I was always with a lot of people who were doing things, and even when I was doing what I was doing, after we did the spin of the three companies, the guy who was the CFO originally of Dun & Bradstreet, he was kind of like my mentor, and so after taking each of the companies out public, and I was there for like 6 to 8 months. He called me up and said, "Hey, look, I got a nice little thing for you to do. I'm on the board." And so that's how I made the transition to what I did then. And it was a turnaround.
So you were CFO of what kind of company?
It was a contract research company. It was called IBAH. So we did specialty pharmaceutical drug development for Pfizer, Merck, all the big names in the industry. So we would do the phase 2. We do some phase 1, but mostly we did phase 2, phase 3 studies, for those large pharmaceutical companies, and we would get their drugs approved, basically. And so once it was approved, then they could go do what they do in terms of.
Did you enjoy it?
Marketing. Yeah, it was good. Well, when I went there, it was growing at 30+% a year and losing money. And so the whole reason I came in was to help them focus on being publicly traded to hit numbers. And the woman who ran it was very good, but she was kind of always looking at what the next best thing that was going to happen in the marketplace. And so she couldn't control her expenses because she was always trying something new. So
Oh,
I had to be the one that said, no, we're not going to do that right now. And
interesting.
and then I mean, it wasn't that hard.
That doesn't seem like you. You
No,
seem
no,
like
not at all. So that was so that's how I got my claim to fame on that. And so right after that, that's when I went into private equity, and that's
okay,
when I
which
started.
isn't that much of a transition, really. I
No,
mean,
no, because a lot of the players that I've met along the way are guys you're going to see forever, and and the whole thing about as you do something with private equity, it's just about developing a company or making it work right. So all the plays that I was ever in, it was either a startup trying to make it into something else and such that you can make it public, or it was a turnaround play in which we were trying to, make it work in such a way that they'd be able to sell it to someone else eventually. So that's how I got my claim to fame on the private equity. And then after doing that, it became a situation of I thought, oh, what those guys like to do is they like to really make things really big, but they don't like to make the foundation. And so I came out and
right.
started.
So for people that aren't that familiar with private equity, I'm somewhat familiar, but it can mean a lot of things. So you guys were going in, finding companies that were uh, you could get a good deal on of various types. You'd buy it and roll it up and try to make it more profitable, or what does this mean exactly?
Well, the main thing is it's all about your EBITDA because you're going to whatever either your valuation most times is going to be off a multiple of EBITDA, even if you're going to go through.
Explain that to people who don't know the word EBITDA.
Yeah, so it's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation. So it's a proxy for cash flow. So if you look at your financials, you're going to take revenue minus revenue minus your total cost is going to give you your operating profit, and then you're going to add back the interest, depreciation, amortization, and that's going to give you roughly what the company's throwing off in cash.
For instance, when people buy machining companies, my understanding is it's generally between 3 and 5. It can be a lot more if the company's all dialed in, or less if it's got
Well,
mad problems.
yeah, I think the way the multiple is always, and regardless of the industry, to me, the multiple is always going to be based on the diversification of your client base.
Mm-hmm.
The more concentration you have, the less multiple you'll have. So if I had a company that has everyone's at 10% or less of your total revenue, you can get a better multiple from that. The more profitable you are, you can get a better multiple. Size can give you a better multiple, meaning that in most cases, the closer you are to 2 million in EBITDA, the better you can be over like a 5 times. So a lot of
And then
times,
isn't the management structure really important?
yeah, the management team and your processes and your systems. So what you're really giving someone who's looking to really bulk it up is you're giving them the base for them to take it from maybe a $15 million company up to a $50 million company really fast because of those things that you have in place. People, meaning management, systems, procedures, and so forth. And
Gotcha.
then if you give those guys, the PE guys, something with the closer you are to 2 million in EBITDA, the more stable it is. And that is going to help you, get a better multiple.
Okay, so at a private equity company, you have a bunch of money and you're using your muscle to go and scoop up companies for as low a multiple as possible, basically.
Well, what I do is, for me, it's more of it's can I number one, can I find something that the industry is going to consolidate? Okay, and if that looks good, then I go in and I say, now can I buy something that I can basically, in my eyes, because I never look at it because I'm buying these things at a pretty small basis. So I'm buying them when they're at a couple million, 2 to 5 million in revenue, and usually they're not run as efficiently as they should, and they don't have all the necessary
Okay,
management
small.
structure and everything else that they should have. So
2 to 5 million. Not you. You never did 20 million
I never,
ones, or
nope, because my whole thing is I gotta create the bases. The bigger it is, well, first of all, the bigger it is, the more expensive it is,
but you
right?
weren't. You didn't own the private equity firm, did you? Or
Well,
you just
you're talking back when we were doing private equity. When we were doing private equity, we would do anything from, I might go into a startup and say, okay, here's 10 mil, Series A. And then we basically try to create value over a year's time such that when we raise the next 10 mil, we can sit there and say, we can really goose the valuation such that during a Series B round, if the valuation was 30 mil at the A round, I want it to be 100 mil at the B round because that's less I'm going to get diluted as we add other people. And usually what happens is when you're going to add another 10 mil, the next big guy coming in is putting the majority in, and we're putting enough in there to maintain whatever percentage we want to own based on by the time we get to a C or D round. So it's a little gameplay, right? It's a little gameplay on how do I create value? I got to create value fast enough so when I bring more money in, I don't get overly diluted.
okay. I mean,
So
it seems to me like it's hard to label all private equity funds the same, but what we often hear is it seems like we see machining companies and private equity companies come in, and they usually screw it up because they're just looking for the bottom line, and they don't understand how to like really run these companies. They just want to do everything for the cheapest possible.
yeah,
Have you found this to be true?
I think that right now I'm buying the assets of another company where someone
But
came
you're
in.
not a private equity company now. You're
No, I'm me, but it's my money and everything I do. I consider my money is my private equity to go do what I want. But
but I'm talking about like big firms that
big firms, big firms, you know, I guess it depends, right? On the firm itself. Good firms are guys who are pretty smart guys who are going to understand how things work. And then they're going to keep their thumb on it to make sure it keeps working the way it should work. And there's going to be goals along the way to make sure. So when I was doing this type of work prior to doing it on my own, every month you got to go and sit on a board meeting with these guys and go through, hey, how did we do this month? And if it wasn't hit numbers, then we had to go through, okay, what happened? And what are we going to do different? But it wasn't just hit you over the head. It's like, what are good ideas to make it work, right? Because at the end, there's got to be motivation. The motivation for the management team is they're going to make money too.
yeah.
That's why they would stay. Because a lot of times these guys you bring in, you're kind of like underpaying them a little, but you're giving them equity. And so everyone's got the same, motivation to say, how do we grow? How do we make it work better and all that sort of thing. And so it's really aligning, people's interests, right? And if you do that, but the other part of it to me too is, and this is how I work is
Right. I want to get to, like what you're doing. You're doing a lot. What you're doing seems more of something more substance, and maybe I'm
a grinder.
I'm being unfair. I hate the word fair, but maybe I'm being unfair to private equity companies. But it seems like you're more.
No, I mean, good companies are good.
Yeah.
The problem is not all companies are created equally, and not, so you're going to have good
Yeah.
people who do really well because they're grinding, right? Then other guys, they just want to be deal makers and they're not grinding. So they may not do as well unless they have a great management team they were able to get in place.
What do you mean by grinding?
Day to day, how does something work? It's the boring stuff, right? It's really, how does the process? Why does that work that way? How do you make it better?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, even people in big companies don't like doing that. So it's not a matter of
Sure.
just investors. It's just, you got to find the right people who are going to sit there and kind of be excited about how does something really work and how do I make it work better and how do I, train people to do it a certain way and get buy-in on that and do all those sort of things. That's it's people. How do I get people to do what you want and to think of the way you want? And
Right.
then
That's the secret.
that's right. And the other part of it is what's the process? And you got to be into it, and sometimes it's not glitzy, right? And running a business and doing it the right ways, it's it's not glitzy. I mean, I always like to say, because everyone wants to understand, oh, what's your strategy? What's this? Strategy is like 10-15% of the total, right? Because once you have what you think you want to do and how you want to get there or the steps or whatnot, now you got to do it. You got to execute. So if you say 15% of strategy and the remainder is execution, man, now you got to work. You
Yes.
got to work it every day. And same with the people you hire. They got to be into executing and making it work and making it better and whatnot. And a lot of people, and then it becomes understanding people, right? Because a lot of people, if you give them a black box, right, they'll do a good job. But if you just throw them into a process and say, hey, make it work, and they flounder, it's really not their fault because that's what we're here for, right? We're here to make sure that for most people, you created that black box so they're comfortable, so they can feel successful every day. So there's
Okay.
a lot of
Neil, I
things.
want you to back up.
Okay.
We've skipped a little bit. So I just want to so you were in private equity and then you eventually left to start just buying your own companies with your own money yourself.
Right.
Give me a little bit of background on the transition of that, and then a few examples of what you did when you were doing that. And then we'll get up to Piedmont where we are right now. But when we prepared for this, you told me about various strategies you have, which you just touched on, but you went from private equity, and then what made you start doing, basically, I guess you'd call it turnarounds. What was the first thing you did, and then what did you find in that first thing?
I guess the way I looked at it was when I first started doing it, my focus was, all right, what do I know and what do I don't?
Why did you
know?
leave private equity?
Excuse me?
Why did you decide you didn't want to work for private equity anymore?
Because I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to be beholden to someone else. And I always talked about it. And then one day I said, man, I got to just go do this. And so how I started was I said, okay, I gotta buy into things that I think I can learn or know. And I'm a mechanical engineer. So I sit there and I said, all right, I want to get involved in things that have some science to it, have some process to it, have some, thought process to it that are mechanical or industrial. So that's how I started looking to buy something. And on the finance side, I felt pretty good about that because I've been doing it for the last 10, 15 years, that kind of work. So that was kind of like, oh man, this is easy, that stuff. And so as I went out and I started to find things, it really became, what am I comfortable with and what I think I can learn of what I don't know. So when I bought the first company, I mean, it took me probably a year. I was
What was
sitting,
the company?
It was a refrigeration HVAC company.
Okay.
And so when I
Why
bought
did
that,
you choose that one?
just because of what I just said, because if it was mechanical in nature, I knew it was a roll-up industry. There was a lot of mom and pops, and I knew there was several guys, trying to roll it up,
Okay.
and whatnot. And so it became, well, that's my competition is those guys who are trying to get big, and I'm just buying something small. So how do I compete against that? And so as I did that and I found it, I mean, like I said, it took me a year to find that one. and so once I started to, once I found it, and then I went and
How
I
many
went and got,
companies did you look at before you found that one?
oh my God, probably 100. Every time I
So
look at
what are you
anything,
doing? What are you doing with yourself this whole year? How are you making? You just had some money
well, I
saved,
had
so
money. My kids were small at the time. I was living down in Naples in my in-laws' high-rise building, looking at the Gulf of Mexico. So I was fortunate, and but I was just traveling all over the place looking at stuff. So I was doing a lot of analysis, pretty much, and then I would go visit the companies and then decide. I'm gonna and actually, I probably I've looked at companies in Arizona, Texas, Florida, and Virginia. I mean, I went all over the place in the process. And as I did that, you know, you never know, right? Because now your money's going to be on the line. And it was a little perplexing at times, right? Trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. And but I was fortunate. I've always been good at analyzing things. And when I did make my choice, I ended up having a decent choice. And my other part of everything I was doing too is it had to be something I felt I could grow, right? Because that's where the value is. If you are going to go grow something, then you're going to just be what you are. And I wasn't looking to get involved and find a small company and just hang out. I wanted to do something and grow. And so when I found the company I found, and it was 10 to 18 people at the time, and again, that was only doing a couple million revenue, but they had a couple good clients. That they had Publix and they had Target. So as I got into that, and within probably 6 months, I was fortunate in that Target came. So I think my background helped Target because we were dealing the with the higher up guys.
you were
And
selling refrigerators and stuff to Target.
no, we were selling services and construction. So in those stores, in all their stores, we would be so in their super targets, we would be servicing uh, meat cases, refrigeration, coolers, freezers in the back room. So anything that maintained their environment for food, preservation of food, and things of that nature. And then on top of that, so that there's a service aspect to it, and the aspect of that is 24/7. They hire you to make sure if anything goes wrong, you got a 2-hour window to get it back up and going. That's the service side. Then on the construction side is because it's mechanical equipment, every 5 to 7 years they replace the equipment. So you may have a Super T in your neighborhood that's been in there for a long time, but every seventh year, 5 to 7 years, they're going in there and they're taking pieces of like all the freezer, all the frozen food section out, all the meat cases out, all that sort of thing. So that's what we were doing. We were taking care of all that. And so what's the transition mean, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, what was it like when you came, and then how did you turn it around?
well, when I came, it was okay. I mean, it just wasn't growing. It was very small. It wasn't, uh, it was like two brothers running it, and and so for me, it became how do I make it grow, right? And for me to make it grow, it became okay. What type of middle management layer do I need to make this work? And then it became okay. What's the scan? What's this the span of control that someone in this industry can handle as we were making the org charts and stuff. And
Were
so we
you
were
were you kind of did you already have like a good roadmap from your past experience, or were you really experimenting?
well, the biggest thing, my biggest probably experiment was the span of control, where I decided that each individual who was a supervisor or a manager can only have 5 people report into them, and that's how we built the company basically. by doing that, we had the proper oversight, the proper controls.
And then you
And
had who? Then you had people on top of those supervisors, or
yes,
were
so
you
you all
just
the
the
way
one
up.
on top of the
Yeah,
supervisors?
yeah. So all the way up, everyone only had 5 people. So even me, when I was the owner, I had no more than 5 people reporting into me. So that's how we did, and that's how we maintained what we were doing. And we did well because in a 6-year period, we went from, um, you know, 10 to 18 people to over 400 people. And we went from 2 million.
Wow.
And we were doing, when I sold it, we were doing, closer to 40 to 50 mil. And by the time I got out 2 years later, after I did the earn out, we were up around, around 80, 90 mil. So we
What
did
do
it
you mean the earnout? Oh, because you sold it then.
because I sold it to a larger firm who was, and they were probably equity owned. And so their whole thing was, how do I get more chunks across the U.S. At the time when they came and they were interested in buying what I had, they had no presence in the Southeast. So I gave them a full presence across, from New Orleans to the East Coast and up through the Carolinas, basically.
So to me, it seems like um, you have the belief that you can grow stuff really fast if you do it right. I started doing. I just read this book, The 12-Week Year, and uh, it's exactly how it sounds. Instead of set all these goals for 1 year, you set goals for every 12 weeks, and really try to accomplish stuff in that amount of time because we waste so much time just giving ourselves time. I'm assuming you have something like that as your philosophy. If you're able to grow it so exponentially in such a small period of time, what do you have a secret sauce for that, or is that kind of the way you think?
Well, I just think that all of us everybody in that company, we all knew we had to grind and we had to pay attention. And that was number one. And then the next thing after that was, where are we getting, how do we get more? How do we get more clients? How do we get more revenue? What else can we offer? It was a mentality almost amongst all of us. And so as we were all thinking that way, and then I think the goals were there too, because every year we would sit there and say, all right, how are we going to grow another, 15% this year?
So
What
you
are we
had
going to
a
do?
really good roadmap, and by doing that, that really
Yeah, I
helped
mean, I
helped
kept a
you.
lot of projections. I would always have a 5-year projection of what I was trying to achieve. And then I would put against that what I think, how I would add clients or what services I could add in order to help hit that. And that's how we would keep focused. And it was interesting too, because in 2008, remember when the downturn,
Yeah.
when they were laying off 700,000 people a month across the U.S. And we had just done an uptick of people, and and I was always nervous. Payroll was always a thing to me that always got me like, oh my God, just made me nervous. So we had just added probably doubled our payroll at the time, and then that hit, and then when we're talking to our clients, no one's talking, and so we took a hit backwards, and so at that point, and no one's talking, I got probably the top 10 guys in the company with me. And I said to them, okay, we just got to get more clients. And I said, and they all reacted the same way because they knew what was going on. And they said, yeah, because we kept thinking that the existing clients, they couldn't get totally rid of us, but we thought it was going to shrink a lot, right? Because everyone was panicking. And I said, we got to get more clients, more construction jobs, more service and everything else. And so we divvied up a bunch of clients to go find. And I remember it was like in September, October. And so by Christmas, we were bringing in all new work. And we are like,
So everybody else was retreating, and you said, "No, that's not the way we're gonna succeed."
yeah. So we were very aggressive. And so right around Christmas, man, things were starting to come in, and we were getting a lot of good opportunities, and we were winning bids and everything else. And then like a week after Christmas, all the existing clients we had woke up, and they said, "Oh, we got to." Then they said, "Oh, we're going to do a bunch of stuff. We're going to." So they started to get aggressive.
Is that because they saw you doing so many things that?
Well, I think they went. Well, I don't think I influenced Target or any of those guys, but I think some of them, like Target at the time, they were sitting there saying, and they were always like a growth. That's why I always liked working with them. They were always into growth, growth, growth. And so they came back and they said, "Oh, we have a new plan. We're going to take all the small stores and put grocery stores, a 20,000 square foot grocery store in each of our small stores,"
Mm-hmm.
which meant big deal for us because that means we're going to do a lot of more service, but it also meant we're going to do a lot more construction. In fact, they affected the price of copper with that when they announced that project, because a lot of stuff that you have to use a lot of copper in these systems and whatnot. And when they did that, and then Publix did more, Costco did more, everyone started doing more right after that, and now we're panicking the other way. So I'm hiring back everyone I got rid of 2 months ago, and then
So
I'm
you
saying,
did
"Oh
get rid
man,
of some people.
yeah,
You
yeah." I
did.
mean, and when we first started off, I took out like at least 40, 50 people, and then I said, "Hey, hang tight." I said, "Go collect unemployment, hang tight." And most of those guys then, and they were welders and stuff like that. And they, they don't worry like we worry. They always figure there's something's going to be out there. My head count down, and then within a 2 month period, I needed all those guys. I got them all back, and then I need all the same amount of those, another 40, 50 people, because everyone went crazy, and we never. It was fun because we never. We never said, "Oh, we couldn't do it." We just said, well, "We're going to find the people. We'll train them." And at that point, we put in a whole training facility because we were growing so much, and so it was really a good time, interesting
And it
time.
must have felt extra good because um, you saw that you could have retreated. Not only did you not retreat, but you pushed it. And maybe, I don't know, did you see other people doing the opposite and you went, that makes me feel extra good? Or
Yeah, because I used to say to all those guys afterwards, I said, "You guys can never catch us. You can never do. You can't compete now." I said, "Plus, I said I'm the biggest Kahuna now, and I have the best infrastructure, and I have the best cost base because I went this way, and you guys are still down here." And that's how I would recruit, some of their people and stuff. But it didn't matter. That's not how you do it anyway, because as you grow fast, you gotta train, you gotta bring on people who don't know what they're doing and train them, and that's the only way you can grow fast. So we really took the approach that we were taking people who didn't know what to do, and how do we bring them from being newbies up to being productive, even on.
it sounds like you had some really good trainers working for you.
I had great people. That goes back to the 5 people per management person. That's why it worked. Because if I had one good guy who knows a lot, and I have 5 people out doing service in a store, different stores, and we had handhelds, and they would put information in, and then they would talk to their supervisor every time they were on a call, then that was part of training to me too. And then it was control, because it made sure that we understood that whatever we were going to do was going to fix the problem, because we had the expert sitting somewhere, or riding around if he had to, and then we had the people in the stores taking input from the experts
So
and
how much
whatnot.
did you
And that's how we.
hire people that were just aces from other things versus the homegrown?
In the very beginning, that's all I did. I would say in my first 2 years, first year and a half, I was just trying to take people, other
Yeah.
companies. And what I was finding was you get a lot of weird situation where the people aren't as good as you. They're not that good. There's a lot of
Hmm.
demons that they
Do you
have.
think it's because,
Okay.
like, what we found with our company, and we haven't hired that many people, but um, you look at the people who have a lot of experience, um, and then you see, well, this guy's been with like 5 different companies, and often been with the same a couple times, and you go, well, why is this? What issues do they have? Do they have personality issues? Do they have alcohol issues? Do they have commitment
Exactly.
issues?
You're saying,
And
yeah,
so that's everybody keeps in our business, and I'm sure in your business, everybody keeps saying, I can't get talented people, I can't hire skilled people. But the grass is always greener, right? Finding these quote unquote aces from other places, it could work, right? But so that was what you started out with, but then later the ideal is the people who
you develop them. You develop a culture and you develop expertise, and then you don't have everything you just said, and you can get away from
So
that.
okay, so it sounds like you had tremendous success with this company. You sold out to private equity. How many times have you done something like that?
3, 4
Three
times
or
now.
four times, and pretty similar. The same
Yeah.
philosophy of 5 minute, 5 people supervising.
Yeah, I maintain that. I've maintained that, yes.
Okay,
So, like, even in this business, what I try to do is I do it based on machines. In my facility here, which is more automated, one lead or one supervisor has 15 machines. One operator has 3 machines. So that means he has 5 people working for him.
you did a similar thing for several types of companies, and then finally, you how did you discover Piedmont, and what's the story behind that?
Well, as I was finishing off one of my companies, I knew I had like a year left. I started to do the same thing. I started to look for another company to get involved with and to purchase. And as I did that, I had made a decision that I was going to do manufacturing of some sort.
And why?
And because at the time, I felt that, as I researched it one night, I felt like there was a lot of small companies that could get, so you could do some roll ups. But I also felt that manufacturing was going to make a comeback in the US for some reason. And this is probably I probably was thinking about this in 2000, let me see, 2013. I sold that one and then 2 years. So it was probably 2015-ish. I was thinking about it, and every time I was looking into these things, I felt like there was a pretty good opportunity in doing these.
You sensed that there would be some kind of comeback in U.S. manufacturing, and
Yes,
then you also had a mechanical engineering background. Did that somewhat
right.
attract you to it?
Yes, that was one of the reasons. Also,
Cool.
it was something I felt like, okay, I can try to make this work. I think I can make it
And
work.
this
I
was
can
like
understand it.
you tell yourself, if I can find the right match on this manufacturing company, this is this is not going to just be something I turn around. You were trying to get a home. Is that a good?
Yeah, it was like, okay, here's my next thing I want to do, and I want to do something where I'm going to grow it. That's my whole
I
focus.
mean, you were working to grow those other things.
Yes, but the same way. I mean, the only reason I would buy something is if I thought I could make it larger and bigger and better, and that's why I was doing it.
Is this your purpose? Is this your why? Feeling like you're just gonna, you want to, it seems like it's a lot deeper than just, I want to make more money. It's growing
No,
something.
it's legacy.
It's legacy.
Yeah, everything I've done, it still works. It still runs. It might not be what name was, but it's still the same, and it's and my way of looking at success is if if I take the last one we talked about, that's still intact, and it's still most of the people that I brought in are still
And it's
there.
providing value
So
to the world. The company is providing value
yeah,
to the world, and it's providing value to the people who are there.
yeah. And if I do something and it goes under or it stops being in existence, then I feel like then okay, that's not a good legacy. That means I didn't do it right.
Part of that sounds like very purposeful, and part of it sounds like it's kind of a game. Like, I want to do it right and make it do it right for the sake of doing it right. I mean, and I'm not criticizing either one.
I think it's a responsibility when I do one of these things. Number one, and people come here. I always start with the people, right? Because I always sit there and say, okay, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, then I can't pay these people. And if I can't pay these people, that means that we did it wrong. And it's my responsibility to make sure that I hit payroll every week and we run the company right. And even as we try to grow, we got to do it in a way that uh, is controllable risk. To me, is how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to be in a position where that people who rely on me for their income, they're not going to get it because I didn't do something right. That I'm a big believer in that. And I also say that to everyone who works here. You know, everyone who works here, we all affect each other, right? Because even if you're the shipping guy and you're shipping out something not to the process that we have, and you ship it to the wrong place, that makes us all look not good. But it also could be where a big client could say, you don't have the proper processes or controls in place. I got someone else's goods, and that's not good. So everything we do, we have to be cognizant of the consequence if we don't do it right in the end. So I'm a big believer in all that way of thinking. We got to do it right. We got to. If everyone has to do what we're supposed to do, right? If we all do what we're supposed to do and take the accountability of what we're supposed to do, then it can work. And the other part of it is I can't do everything, right? So I got to rely and delegate to people, and I got to make sure that they're trained right, and so we don't have those
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. And if someone does something wrong, it's the first thing I say to people is, uh, "We did it wrong. I did it wrong because I didn't set it up right." So when something doesn't go right, it's the people who manage the company didn't do it right. That's how I start, and I assess it. So I don't sit there and say, "Oh, I don't go to the weakest link and say, "Oh man, because you're the weakest link, we messed up," because that's not right. Because if we're going to manage this thing correctly, we understand where the weakest link is, and we put controls in to make sure that we don't have a debacle in the end.
In these turnarounds, do you ever just say, I'm not having any fun here. This is, I'm just not feeling it. I'm gonna, I'm just gonna cut
I
my
think in
losses
everyone,
and go to something that I like better.
no, I never, because it's no matter, I remember the first time I did something, right? And I was sitting there, and I remember now I'm not in corporate America. I'm not in these nice New York digs in these offices. I'm in some place where it's like, oh my God, and I'm thinking, what did I get myself into? Right. And, but then in my next breath, I said, you know, quit crying, figure it out, make it work. Right. Because that's why we did it. We do it. That's why we do everything. We do it because we want to make it work. So it's my responsibility. And once I'm in, I'm in. Same with this one. I mean, when I first did this, I probably would say to myself, I got enough money. I don't need to do this. Why am I killing myself?
Yeah.
Why I have to put up with this? And then, after a week or two, you know, I'd say, okay, quit, get your head out of the sand and do what you're supposed to do, and make it fun. That's what you got to do. You got to make it fun. If you start saying it's not fun, it's because I'm not making it fun. So I got to figure out why, and I got to make it fun because
So
that's why you
what
do
is
this.
it though that I mean, besides having this doing this cool podcast today, what else did you do today that was fun?
And I'll tell you, the first thing I did that was fun today was my 9 a.m. phone call with my new client relations person that I just hired. Okay, so every now, she came on yesterday. Every day,
Oh, is this the
we talk
person
at
we were
9 o'clock.
talking about before when we were talking about the machine?
It could be, yeah. Yeah, she's the one who's going to bring all this stuff in, and I better get going because I got to make sure I can handle it, and I got to get everything in place to handle it because I think she's going to do a great job, and she's already doing a great job, and she gives me energy too because
Yeah,
she's she's got energy and she's into it, so that gives me energy.
absolutely.
It makes it fun. I love being around people who want to own it and they like doing it and they want to make it something better, right? I got a guy out on the floor that I hired last week or a week and a half ago, and he's doing samples for one of a major Fortune 500 company, and we're probably going to pick up hopefully between 20 to 30 more parts from those guys. But we got to go give them samples to show we can do them, and we're knocking them off quicker than I thought we
Does
would.
it matter to you what product you're making? Does that would that make it more exciting or less exciting?
Nah, I guess I just like making it. I just like it's always saying you did something, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't matter that we make uh, you know, roller bearing we don't do the assemblies, but roller bearing components for landing gear. I mean, I'd love to talk about it and make me sound cool, right? Say, yeah, that plane you're on, maybe we did something. Maybe that's something that came out of my shop. But I feel the same way with the automated doors. Hey,
Yeah,
maybe when you walked into that at the hospital, that was some of our components in there. So it's to me, it's more of just doing it and being and it's the end product, right? You did it and you did it right and it works. That's what makes me happy, I guess. I like that.
yeah. And then the I know for me, it's the process. I mean, you hope that the process is the fun part. Um,
Yeah,
I find, um, and I don't know if you can relate to this. I'm not sure if you think the same thing or not. I sometimes I have these, we get a home run, we get a big deal, we sell a machine and do quite well, and afterward, I'm just like, all right, on to the next thing. Uh, it was, it was like, it was the process. It was,
yeah.
you know, it was meeting Neil and then talking about his needs and, you know, learning about what you were doing and then the puzzle that I found fun. But then in the end, like, maybe you make a huge deal and you go and get an Italian beef or some pizza or something, and then go on. Maybe. Um, do you feel like when you land the big client or when you sell one of your companies, does that give you like exhilaration?
Sure. I mean, anytime you're successful with anything, right? It gives you some happiness is the way to look at it. But then that happiness, I remember when I sold my last company, and I was just sitting there thinking, I got to do something, and I was like, what am I going to do? I got to do something. I got to go find
Uh-huh.
something. And
Is it
and
kind
so
of an
you're
empty
right.
feeling before you?
Yeah, you got to go do something because it's not like it's a great thing getting through it and doing it and saying, oh my God, I was part of something that went from small to bigger, and we were able to sell it. But then it's like, what am I going to do? Sit around home,
Yeah.
right? That's not going to make it. And I think within a month or two after I sold that, I was like, oh my God, I got to do something. because I can't sit home. I got to find something to
Yeah, I
do. I
feel
got
the
to find
same
a
way
new
if like
effort.
a video project or some quest I have, and then afterward, I mean, it's such a relief. Like you don't have to do. I went a whole year like where I met a new person every day, and then I documented it, and it was like I finally got to the end, and then it was like, oh, shit, I don't have to do that today. Like, uh, I can relax. My wife, it's not going to drive my wife crazy. And then I was like, well, now I need some other project hanging over my head. Like, otherwise, I'll just feel like a blank, right?
Right, right.
And that's probably
Well,
how you feel, right?
yeah, I mean, my wife says to me, why don't you retire? And I said, because I said, what am I going to do? I said, I'm going to, one, I'll be home driving you crazy and you'll be telling me, get out of here. I said, two, I said, what am I going to go hit a golf ball or go stay on the tennis court? Or
A lot of
I
people
said,
are good with that, but
nah, I don't know. I mean, I'd rather just pay on the weekend or something like that. I just can't, that can't be that doesn't sustain me in the end,
yeah.
you know?
I know my dad. He says, if he can't work, I don't know how much he means it, but he's like, yeah, if I can't work, I'll die.
I,
It sounds morbid,
I,
and I don't think he truly means it, but part of him does.
no, I think there's truth to some people because, and I think part of it too is I grew up on my uncle's farm, right? I did it through junior high and high school, and and um, and then he had all these older people that were always there, year after year. They were older too. I mean, these guys were in their 80s. Some of these people, and I would say to my uncle, I said, "Man, these people are in their 80s." He said, "Yeah, they're not here. They're going to die." And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, right." And sure enough, you know, I remember a couple of them. I remember this one lady, Peggy, and she was like 83. She goes, "No, I can't do it anymore. I'm not coming." And a week later, I think within a month, she was dead. And so I went back to my uncle. I said, "Man, I think you're right. I think that these people, it was a purpose for her to be here.
Yeah,
And so without that purpose, you know, he says, yeah, he says, just remember this when you grow up." So maybe there's some of that influence too. But I also, I just think I think if I hang out, I'll be bored, and boredom's not good for me.
just let's get a little bit of. I want to know a little bit about the parts you're making, a little bit more, and what are your big goals for this business? When we spoke before, you talked about the importance of visualizing where you're going when
Sure.
you have a business. So, what are you visualizing for this business? You called about an index, and um, which of course, hopefully we'll sell you one. We got one in Deutschland ready to go. Uh, but what yeah, what are you visualizing? I think I know I'm trying to work on my visualization. I think we spoke about it, how sometimes it's more of a north star versus more specific. Maybe you're really good at getting specific though, because you've done it before and you kind of know
Yeah.
what this you know you've doubled it, you've tripled it, you've created this culture. What are you visualizing for this company?
So what I visualize now is, we probably have roughly 35,000 square foot of production space in two buildings. So there's different ways to go. I might get another 20,000 square foot building and keep expanding like some of the healthcare stuff and some of the aerospace stuff that we're starting to take on. So my visualization is I need more space without a doubt. I probably see it as um, the goal is probably to my goal is always to automate as much as possible. But through automation, I see myself or the company growing to like 80 to 100 people, and then it becomes you know, in terms of the facility. I mean, Nirvana would be I'd get a 60 to 75,000 square foot building and consolidate everything together. So I'd have what I have now plus new stuff, right? That's the vision. And then in the people, of course, and then the clients, of course. I feel like, you know, some of the moves that we're making now can definitely get us to that point. Like the woman that we brought on for the client relations, I know she can bring me business and a lot of business. And so then after that, I know I added a couple good production leads to the team, and I probably have to add more of those guys. And then on top of that, I have to, one of the things, just like I did in some of the other companies we had, I think it's time to really get into what's a true training program and facility, right? Because if I really want
Mm.
to grow and get to those headcount levels, I got to develop people
Done a couple
myself
of good
because you can't find.
podcasts on that. I'll have to send them to.
Yeah, yeah. But I gotta start thinking, and that's part of the vision. I gotta start having that training capability or apprenticeship or whatever the words people want to use in order to make us able to go, to that
Are
next
you good
level.
at chunking it up for yourself so you don't get overwhelmed with all these goals?
Yeah, because I try to find the right people around me because everyone's got to. I'm not doing it all. Let's take the training, right? At the end, I'm not going to be the guy who designs the training. It's going to be these guys out on the floor who do this thing, who's been running machines and these processes all their lives, and they're going to help me, and they're going to probably be giving me a lot of input of how to do it. And it'll probably be more of their design. I might be way up here with my thought process, but they're going to be doing, what the minutia is to make it
Are you a
work.
micromanager or not?
Sometimes not. If people can't, here's how I look at it. Everyone has a chance to come up with a solution, and if there's an issue, my attitude is, well, give me your solution. I'll listen, and we can implement it if it makes sense. But if you can't come up with a solution, or to me you don't know how to, then I'm probably going to jump in and give you my 2 cents of what we should be doing.
Right, but I mean, like you talk about delegating all the stuff, oh, the people teaching, etc. Like, how much are you going to dip your finger in there? Depends.
Well, first of all, I've never run a machine in my life, so I can't run the floor.
And do you think that's an advantage for you?
Yes, because I guess I look at life through KPIs, right? I mean, what should my output be by machine? Am I getting it? And if I'm not, then I go talk to the guys on the floor and say, hey, what's going on? If our cycle time is this, and we're not getting the output per day or whatever, what is the machine down, or are we having problems with the operator?
We'll just wrap it up pretty quickly. I always ask people, um, when has something serendipitous played a big role in your life?
I guess maybe it's right growing up with my parents. I mean, for me to learn the way I learned, right, and the way they would say the support and how they would say you could do whatever you want to do, and all that sort of thing, right? I mean, I never felt like I couldn't do. I never felt there wasn't anything that I could not achieve, or if I really wanted to do it, based on
And you
how they
think
would
that's a big thing from your
teach us.
parents?
I think that's a huge thing, yeah. And I think you know I think we also learned because my dad really worked, right? And
What did he do?
anything you got, you had to work for. He was in the trades and stuff, and so he worked a lot to make sure that we all had what we were supposed to have, or what he thought we were supposed to have. So we were like pretty good middle class family and stuff. But he was also a very family oriented guy too. Like we were all, as I went on to excel, he he would always try to ground me and say, "It's not about money. It's about your family." You know, and so there was always a grounding. And my mom was always like, I think she kind of understood that it doesn't, as you try to become something bigger or better, it's not about money that why you do it. It's about the opportunity. And I think she always supported the whole idea of you can do whatever you want, you can achieve, just keep going. Don't listen to other people, just keep going. And don't feel guilty, just keep going.
Don't feel guilty. That's an interesting thing. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
I think because we're, the Catholic guilt, because we were all Catholic growing up.
So don't feel guilty about being really successful
Yeah,
or
about successful and where you end up. And because, look, I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and
on a
um,
farm.
yeah. And so now, you know, as I left there, and then, I worked in New York City, I worked, outside Chicago. I worked in a lot of different LA. I mean, I worked a lot of places. And, I lived in Brussels, Belgium for 5 years. And, and, so that was always an opportunity when you got to do that. It wasn't a bad, it wasn't like you're neglecting your little small town roots. It's just where
Right.
you ended up doing what you were
Right.
doing.
So, I mean, whereas some people have family or friends or a community that's trying to pull them down, and you had parents who were the opposite.
Keep
But it's
going.
interesting. It
Right.
seems like your dad was
Yeah.
trying to ground you, and your mom was like, "Spread those wings. Don't feel."
Go. I think she lived in say my brother's a lawyer, and I think she saw it as vicariously, because she was always in the small town, right? And so for her, it was something that she got to experience other things through
Mm,
us in a way. And I think that was a positive for her too. And so I don't know. That's how I look at all that. So my parents, they were really good at being good parents and trying to keep us um, humble too, right? But also go for it. Just go for
it
it
seems like
at
you.
all
It's.
times.
I mean, that's the vibe I get from you. You are humble, and you are like balls out. I want this. I'm going for it.
Yeah, and even now, my I think my wife right now, she's like,
Is she retired?
"Why are you what?" When this no, she
Oh,
she
she
works with
works
me
with you.
still,
Has she
and
worked with you along the whole journey?
yeah, she does the no. Well, yeah, I mean the last two or three of them, she's always been doing something in one of them. I mean, in one of them, she worked in the warehouse. And we had when we had the kids, and the whole reason she worked in the warehouse was it just she wanted to do something, and she didn't want to get into something else that was anything crazy or anything, and that way she could come in at
Right.
10 o'clock in the morning and leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the kids. That's
Yeah,
everything.
that's a really nice thing.
Yeah, and now she does HR here, and so for her. And I love having her here because she's more socially adept than I am. She's really good with people, so she makes it more, makes people feel more homely and cared for and all that kind of stuff. And so she's a great. It's great that she's here, especially on what we're doing here, especially as we bring on more people and doing more things right now. But she looks at me now and she goes, "Oh my God, you're never gonna quit. You're never gonna stop working." And I'm like,
Does she want to kind of, dial it back?
well, I think for her, as long as she has the ability to go do things when she wants to go do it, she's happy. So she and I have a daughter, and they like going to Paris. And so as long as she has my daughter to go over to Paris for a couple of weeks, she's happy, right? It gets her something different.
Versus working in a job
Yeah,
where
yeah,
she may not be able to go to
right.
Paris.
And
So it's a nice arrangement.
yeah, and her parents live in Austria, so she probably stops in a lot of times and sees them on while she's over there and stuff. And
I like that. She probably
well,
like
no, I know she
you're
does.
not sure.
Well, sometimes she doesn't want to, and sometimes I say to her, "Hey, you better stop and see your parents while you're over there, because if you don't, they're going to say, hey, you come all the way over here and you didn't stop and see us." And So I've always, sometimes she says, well, I don't know, I'm going to have time. I said, yeah, you're going to have time. You got to go do that, So I'm a little bit of an
Interesting.
influencer on that kind of stuff.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people of the world before we
Yeah,
wrap this up?
yeah, I think be good to each other, you know, uh, take care of the team and in your teams. If you're going to run something, you're only as good as your team, and your team is only as good as you, and you got to work together. And just because you may think you're the top dog, it's all of you together are the top dog. That's the only way you're going to make it work. That's what I'm going to tell people.
Awesome. Thank you.